follow-up question from Charles.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Bob. Come in,
How
Bob.
did,
Go ahead.
yeah, this is kind of like a follow-up to Charles's question. So how did we lose our awareness in the first place?
Well, again, look at the question you just asked. Help me out here, Sandy. You're the objective view with Bob, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. How do you see that question, Sandy?
He's asking for, let's see, how can I put this? He's asking for when, I think he's doing it as a whole, like how did everybody lose their awareness in the first place? Of course, that wasn't very objective.
No, I was talking about, see, hold on, see, okay, let's start over. See how it starts to get confusing? Just for one question? See how it starts to go? All right, you asked the question, how did we lose our awareness in the first place? Wasn't that the question?
Yes.
Yeah, I know the question.
Let's just stick there, okay? See, because everything you say after that, you're adding to the confusion. And then she tries to analyze your question. That is not what I asked. I said, did you see the question he asked? You're the objective view. Okay, what I'm saying is that what I just went over, okay, it's the same thing. How did God how did God create everything? See, it's the same idea. You're asking the question, and the reality is, first of all, you never lost anything. Nothing is ever lost or found. But by the very fact that you ask that question, and now people start discussing that and adding ideas to it, you've just created more confusion and more confusion and more confusion. Because, see, life is an isness. It's not all these ideas that you try to figure out. So you tried to figure out his question or what he's trying to think and ask. You're trying to think for him. You see how it gets confused? And it's none of that. So what you do is you go back, and now this is not a criticism. It's just it's kind of an example. You go back to that question. Think about what you're asking. Okay, so we use the idea think, but that's with the literal self. But it's better to say see what you've just decided and created. You see, you created that idea. How did we lose our awareness in the first place? Well, now let's compare this to the isness life is and the sun shining as an example of that. Now, when you look at the sun, we'll just use this as a one-dimensional objective view with our eyes. When you look at the sun, has it ever been lost? Does it ever stop shining? Isn't it so that, no, even when it's behind the clouds and the earth, is it not there? Is there a sun down and a sun up? When you're standing with the sun, there's no such thing as sun down and sun up. But when you're standing on the earth, you have these ideas about the sun, don't you? And for the most part, you go with the ideas of the sun and not the reality of the sun. You see how things become confused? Very fast? Very fast.
For sure. Very fast.
Well, I knew it was that kind of a question. I knew it was one of those unanswerable, self-deceptive questions that was the same as, how about the Big Bang? I knew it was the same kind of question.
Well, real fast, let's just take it a step at a time. There's no rush. Again, let's real fast go over the Big Bang Theory. Okay, who decided that? You see,
yeah, we did.
What knucklehead out there promoted that and marketed that, and how many people agree to that? You got probably millions and hundreds of millions. You see, and all of a sudden they're thinking, well, no, it's the Big Bang Theory. This is what science has said, and you know what? That's lodged in people's subconscious. You see, that's lodged in their subconscious, and that can be for lifetimes. And that one idea can restrict them from recognizing themselves. That one idea. That's true. It's very real. Look at the sun shining. Are there any ideas with the sun shining? The sun is fine. Again, it's the best example here of, you want real freedom? Learn to recognize what the sun shining is demonstrating. You see, people are running around the earth. You're asking these questions. So in the meantime, what do? Do you just stand there like the sun shining? No, because we're on earth. We need to do things. We have bodies. So all of a sudden, now you can decide to make better choices. You see, that's the whole idea. Or you don't. You don't decide anything. You just keep doing what you've always done. You are always the decider. No, your awareness has never been lost. It's an isness. This is what's so cool now. You see, again, it's like when you were in the spiritual paths and the corporations. You were always striving. It was always for the personal self. Oh, I want that next initiation. I want enlightenment. Oh, I want the darshan from the master and all these things. Always chasing these ideas, right? And oh, I want to get to the higher worlds and all that. You see? These are just ideas that you're looking at, not realities, because life's an isness. Now you know that. Now what you do is you start comparing everything, but you decide this, to what isn't that. You see? So you can use the sun as an example to start with. This is your prop. You know, it's like the vessel project, okay? You know, for the most part, when a project is created, they have prototype, right? And if it's a car or if it's a ball or whatever, they create a prototype. Well, hey, I wasn't going to try to spend any money because I wasn't having it at the time. I was just barely making rent in 2012, 2013 when I wanted to do the vessel project. So I had seen the solar boat that was in Planet Solar Boat that was made in Germany. And I looked at that and I thought, oh, that's a cool design, how they did that. So I exaggerated that design and created the All Solar Research vessel, you know, as a focus for something, starting off with real food, real water, real air, something, and eventually becomes the Universal University. So I used the Planet Solar as the demonstration and idea for what I was presenting with the All Solar Research vessel. In other words, hey, I already had my prototype built. I didn't have to build it. And so I cheated. Okay, no, I was clever. I was creative, you see, whatever. And so I didn't have to spend millions of dollars to build this prototype to see if it worked. I wasn't interested in doing that anyhow. So again, here we have the sun. And so you might say, let's just pretend, let's have fun here. The is provided the sun for everyone to see, you know, the prototype of itself, you might say. Let's just say that. And if that's workable and that makes sense and it can equal what we want, then it's all okay, isn't it? You see? Yes, it is. Whatever makes sense. So, no, you've never lost anything. You decide, and when people get so-called Alzheimer's, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as insomnia, Alzheimer's, and all these things. But if you keep agreeing to it, then it becomes your reality, you see, because you have your real awareness. Here's the idea. In other words, take Alzheimer's, because people are getting it with all the heavy metals. That affects the personal self. It affects the mechanism. You know, just like if you don't put oil in your car, it stops running, okay? You need to put oil in it. Well, that's a mechanism you're dealing with, because your real experiences are all in your real awareness. It's your view to recognize that. But at the same time, it's like you have a computer. There's you and there's a computer. You are the awareness. You're the operating the computer. But the computer stores things like your mind and your memory and all these things. And so these vehicles are just like the computer. And when you learn to recognize with your real awareness, you see that even if the computer isn't working, or the memory, or you have the so-called Alzheimer's thing, you still have your awareness. See, people are looking at memories. Oh, I can't remember this. I can't remember that. I can't remember a lot of things myself. I can't even remember sometimes my next thought or what I was thinking or walking into the other room. That's not the real me. That's the personal self. Okay, it's like a flat tire on my bike. All of a sudden, oh, I got a flat tire. That's not me. See, I'm the real awareness. So as you learn to focus on this real awareness and learn to see and recognize it as opposed to the mechanics of yourself, you want to recognize those too, because you want to recognize the difference instead of bringing them all together. See, even when we've gone through all these so-called paths and teachings, whatever, and the end result is after you've gone through all these things, what do you learn? And for the most part, most people, just like the relationships I had, my first wife, etc., they go right back to their personal life. And I even asked her one time, I said, you've been through all of this. What have you learned? Have you learned that there's more, or that's just it? You went through it. Now you go back to your personal life and you stay asleep. You see, that was just the first step. And so it becomes very, very interesting. So yes, no, you never lost anything, young man. You simply learn to decide to see what already is. And then these questions, do you see in my books or anywhere where I ask these questions? No, I don't. I don't ask questions of life at all. What I do is I see what it is, and then through these vehicles, I interpret it the best I can, because it becomes a distortion here to where it can only be a reference. And I'm not going to distort it any more than it is, saying that, these are sacred writings. These are the great writings of Duane, the great writer, etc. That's nonsense. These are references to the isness. And the best part is that when you figure out how to, you might say, step back from the whole of life and quit deciding what it is, because that isn't it, and allow it to show you, there's your real experience. Can you do that? Instead of chasing all the thrills of the world, you got time to do that? Very few people do. So again, you want real freedom? You got to recognize it. Real freedom is recognize it. It's not something handed. It's not just because the president gives you the Medal of Honor and puts it around your neck. Actually, that's just another anchor. And you got that medal from Walmart anyhow. They don't care. So again, this is the look good appearance world, and it's fine. Respectfully, hey, everything is fine. No negating anything. But each individual makes the choice. And so again, when you ask the question too, look at how you ask the question. Again, this is not a criticism. You decide. Are you asking it for yourself? When you say we, is there more than one of you? Are you talking about the 5 bodies? Or are you also deciding, are you asking the question for everybody else?
Yeah, for everybody else.
You see? Look at it for yourself and allow everybody else to decide what they will. And you simply get on with your adventure if you want to with this. And you present something that makes sense and see what happens. You cannot decide or think for others. Go ahead.
Yeah, come on. Okay. Well, a couple of nights ago, I did something a little different, and it's along the lines of what you're saying. Is I had a very interesting dream, and it involved an ex that we shared this with. That's
Connie Knudsen.
Connie Knudsen. She's like a 50-year ex, and thinking about all this, I went to sleep doing the new you. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to mentalize this. I'm going to try to become aware by not mentalizing it, just by feeling that all is awareness. And I have this dream, and this dream, I'm dreaming that I'm dreaming, and I'm in this house, and Sandy's in this house with me, and I have this dream of a dream where I have a real side experience. I'm in a different area, like on the real side, where I've never been before. It was a brand new experience for me. And I was consciously aware of it. And in the middle of this real awareness dream, Connie pops up, and she's in this dream, and she says, "Robert, you've arrived. You're having your very first real side experience." And she says to me, she says, call me on the phone right away and we can talk about this. This is your first real side experience. And so I thought, wow, this is really kind of neat. So I wake up from my dream and the sleep, and I get a hold of Sandy, and I said, Sandy, I just had this real side experience with Connie, and she says, call her on the phone. And she lives, 20 miles away. And Sandy says, oh, don't do that. Absolutely don't call her, because this can't be real, because she's still an Ekist, and it's probably the influence telling me that. And so then I wake up from my dream in my bedroom. So I wake up from my dream, and I wake up and I go and start talking to Sandy about this dream that I had where she said, don't do it. And so she says, well, it couldn't have been a real experience.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, something to that effect. She said this had to be an illusion set up by the influence. So, and I don't know what to think of it. What do you think?
I think it's a crack up. So again, I love how Sandy comes in and says, "No, don't call her." No, again, it's like, okay, whatever. It's the cosmic deceptors. They're chatteled into you or whatever. I know we have all these things. We're funny. See, when it comes to here, it's all funny. But I'm so glad that you brought that up, because again, this is what I've been looking at to more define too. And I will give a definition here. See, you have a dream within a dream. Okay. And so what is really taking place there? Okay, let's look at it. Okay, and you've got the personal self. You've got that there too. It's like there's you, the real you, and you've got your 5 bodies, okay? And each one of these bodies in their own way, because of how you set them up, it's like your children. When you're talking and the children are listening, they want to know, don't they? And these are like your 5 bodies. You're telling the 5 bodies, and it comes through a particular. What I'm always suggesting is learn to create a comparison, not just accept the one point of view, but use the sun as an example. Okay, let's compare this to the sun, this idea, so we see the difference between the two and where it fits. One part fits in the literal world, one part fits with our real awareness, and to recognize how it fits there as also in the real world, because again, we're communicating, we live here, etc. So, okay, let's go back to the dream within a dream. All right, what is taking place in there is that when what is being said is that, oh, you're having your first real side experience. Here's the idea. Okay, I started off with your dream visions. All right, that becomes the dream world where you're walking through it and you're having these experiences and you're trying to figure out what's going on. The real side experience is where you recognize the dream world. You see, they're not the same. That's where I'm bringing in the real side, etc. There is two. There is the dream world, there is your dream visions, and you have all these experiences. Oh, I'm having these visions, whatever. But the reality, the real side experience is that when you are recognizing the dream world that you're in and that you have created, etc. So again, you look at the stages you went through. I would suggest to write that down and just, very definitely, again, write your experiences. Write that down. That's very, very good, because you're seeing the different applications that are taking place between you and your personal self, and also this adventure you're on. See, there's also the adventure. So when it comes back here and you decide, well, I had this and whatever, and again, even though you had the experiences, let's say you talk to this person on the real side or whatever, that's their real awareness. The adventure is that when you come back here, of course, all of a sudden, I've seen my neighbor who's an old Ekist too, but here she wants nothing to do with me, which is fine. So I'm the same way. I'm indifferent to her. She lives right across the street. She's been in Ek like 30, 40 years, and she wants to follow Joni. That's her choice. She follows the corporation. But the challenge is that take a look at this when it comes back into the physical sense, and it's all choice, isn't it? You go through all these experiences, but you decide from wherever it is. But at the same time, you're told this. In other words, I get objective views from others, and Rebazar brings these people in. This is what Claudia and I are doing. See, she gives me objective views about what I'm deciding and what we're going through and the galactic stuff, etc. She becomes the objective view. Just like the President of the United States has all these advisors. He needs these advisors for objective views, and he'll say, well, what do you think, Frank? How do you see this idea, or Bill, or whatever, just as an idea, okay? These are objective views. I utilize this all the time. I see the objective views that I utilize to, if I'm focused on something or if I'm going to do something, how to proceed with these things. So you're getting these objective views through your experience, but the end result is you are going to decide the outcome in the adventure. How are you going to do it? So it's like me, as I've gone through all this experience, and at some point in the beginning, no, I couldn't figure it out. In 2001 to 2003, that's where I just took on so much that I had to step back, plus other things, plus I saw the future, and it scared the heck out of me, and I didn't recognize it, so I jumped back. It took me 3 years to re-coordinate myself to where I could come up, and I started to recognize this. It was a new position, started to recognize this into what it is today. It took me a whole lot to do this, but I focused adamantly all the time to bring this about in this new presentation, etc. Because in 2001, it wasn't that. It wasn't until later on that it became that, prior to 07, when Rebazar brought me back in, to where I was adjusted enough to where I could continue on and handle this thing, because it's huge. And it's mainly unseen. Most people don't recognize, they think it's this or that. It's not at all. It's about awareness, and it's about if you can stand the impact of this thing, because it's huge, coming through the real universes into this reality here, which is so convoluted and distorted. And to handle this and to be able to see this and whatever, but your experience is excellent. That's an excellent experience, but it breaks down to one thing. This is what I see, and that is that you decide how you're going to figure it out. You see, that's where you come in from all these things. And, again, it's always a test. You call somebody up, you say something or do something like we had talked about with the members that you've known in the corporation. You're right there. And from where objectively I'm standing here and looking at your experience, and I'm seeing why Rebazar picked you. The thing is that they can pick anybody, and they do. They pick you, and they give you certain experiences to where you start to see this. They don't do that with everybody, because actually, for some people, it's going to really disrupt their personal lives. But they could see that you would in some way start to grasp this. Okay, so, and then from there, you are the decider. So you had those first experiences, which we wrote about. You were shown on the real side a new word. You investigated it. You decided to do that. You decided every step of the way. You didn't have to. You could have said, oh, that's nothing, it's baloney. And you could have looked it up on the internet. It's like, oh, here's this Duane the Great Writer, knew you. That's baloney. We're with the corporation. See, you could have decided any way at all. They took the risk in choosing you. They did, because you have free will, and it can go any way at all. That's how funny we are here. So again, through all that experience, it all comes down to, okay, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? So you two discuss it. You'd have some jokes about it, whatever. It's funny. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I thought it was the real McCoy. I mean, I thought it was a real side experience. I mean, it was something I've never experienced before, and it was in full recall. And to me, it was very real, and it felt like real side from everything.
It is.
And I thought it was absolutely wonderful. I want more.
Well, here's the idea. Yes, we want more experiences, but you can supersede the experience if you decide to. So just to give you an idea, do you want to wait for more experiences?
No,
Or
I want to know.
do you want to decide more than the experience itself? You see, it always comes in the deciding. So again, let's say you had an experience where you played football on the real side, and yeah, it was real. Yes, it is real. It's all real. The dream area, everything is real. All you have to do is agree to it. If you don't agree to it, then it becomes your so-called unreality, but you still had the experience. How can you say it's not real? How can you say it's fantasy? How can you go to the movies and watch a Disney cartoon and say, oh, that's all fantasy? You just experienced it. Just like everything else, is there a difference? No. But if you're playing football on the real side and you've never played football before, let's just say, and hey, you're the quarterback and you throw the ball and somebody catches and they make a touchdown. It's like, wow, I felt this, I experienced it. Now you come back into the physical because, see, we think there's a difference. There is no difference. We just think there is a difference. It's all an isness. So all of a sudden, maybe you had the desire to always play football. Now all of a sudden you realize it, but you have the choice now. You want to go play football? I don't know if you ever saw the old movie, Damn Yankees with Tab Hunter.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's a great old movie. Great example of a person having a desire, the old guy Joe having the desire. Well, in this one, the devil comes along, one of the devil's agents, and he goes, hey, Joe, I'll make it for you. You're going to be the young guy. You're going to be young Joe, and Joe Hardy. You're going to go out there and hit home runs. Well, when you look at that, you need the devil. Okay, do you need an agent, a devil agent? No, you don't need that at all. You have your real awareness. You can do whatever you want. But is it about playing football? Is it about that? No, these are examples of what is possible. And so now you have the knowledge of what is being presented here by the real guides through all of life itself. So you see, now you can see the bigger picture from the experience, but you got to decide to do it, see it, and this is where your intent comes in. It's very important to recognize that also. Everything has to be in place. So you've had the experience, but there's something more than what the experience is revealing. Can you learn to see that? Go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Sandy has a interesting...
just a little thing. This happened about a half an hour ago while you were talking, Duane. And on my computer, you know how they have those little circles with people's pictures in them? All of a sudden, Rebazar Tars was in a beautiful filigree gold frame, and he popped up on my screen as that. And I thought, wow, I never thought of him listening in or etc. So that was the little experience.
They're all here.
Yeah.
They hear every word. When I talk to Claudie, I was talking to her about one of the deals that I always discuss this, the funding and the galactic stuff with her. And I don't always mention this because it gets to be too much for people. And it's just, anyhow, so I said something to a banker and I offered him a position. And then Paul was talking to her on the real side, and he said to her, oh, that was a good idea Duane had. He offered him a position. No, they listen to everything. They hear everything I say. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a nowness. You see, it's all now is now. That's really what it is. And the only obstructions there are is what we decide. You see, we decide the obstructions, but there is none. And I have to deal with my personal self too. Hey, I'm not always up or down or whatever. It says I have to deal with this personal self too. And so, but it's not about the personal self. It's like your car. Maybe it's not running good, but it gets you there. And so, so we have all this, but the real adventure is to recognize this. And while we do have time before things get too bad, it's just like, just like the Skype here that's coming up. I'm sure many of you seen it, that in September, there's going to be a change here with the Skype. That's a heads up. You see, they're giving the heads up. So what's going to happen next? And, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, the heat and whatever, and I was talking to a fellow in Canada, one of the guys I'm dealing with, they have these huge electrical storms up there that create the forest fires. Well, it's very interesting. Well, if anybody saw the movie Geoengineering last year, that's a heads up again. In other words, this is what they're doing. People are still thinking in the terms, even though they know this geoengineering, they're still thinking in the terms, oh, the weather's doing this, the weather's doing that. The weather is consciousness, too. It's all part of the consciousness. And it's engineered, it's manipulated. It's not the same weather as you thought of weather, when the monkeys were jumping around the monolith, like in 2001, the movie. No, the weather was different then because the consciousness was different. You have the consciousness and you got manipulators. So is this real weather or is it all manipulated? It's all manipulated. And so we're going through this process of being constantly poisoned and doped down and made to be sleepy and unaware, etc., because the world's becoming too aware. They don't want us here. So this is the time factor. The time factor will go on. But at the same time, just like if we don't have the Skype here, then we got to figure out another way. You see, we got to constantly figure out another way. So I take it for granted too. And this is where we take the time element for granted, because as the world is getting more poisoned, it's going to be harder for people to register anything, even with their personal life, let alone be able to equate what's going on the real side or in their dreams. So this is the time factor. See, right now, we're kind of in the prime. But then again, it can go very fast to where the world is so confused and so, chaotic and agitated that they can't pay attention. So we do have a few moments here. So that's why I spend every moment I can. And plus, my focus is on the universal community, because that will supersede everything. So this is why I promote that. And again, as people decide to be a part of that and recognize it from the real side to here, it can be more so. But again, because everything else, even the projects and that, they're nice, they sound good, but they're not going to do it. They're just things in creation. The universal community will do what nothing else can, but you got to see it.